Welcome back to Relationship in the Raw, hosted by Estes Therapy, where we talk about real relationship challenges and solutions brought to you by actual therapists.
Hi, my name is Lauren and I'm a therapist here at Estes Therapy. Today I'm excited because I have Sarah, one of my fellow therapists, here with me, and we're going to be talking about codependency.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a therapist here, as Lauren said, and the clinical manager.
So as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about codependency. And to start off, Sarah, could you just walk us through what codependency is?
Yeah, so codependency is when you're dependent on someone else to find your own worth, to be okay, to regulate yourself. So that's not to be confused with interdependence. Interdependence is actually our goal in relationships, what we strive for. It's a really healthy place. It's relying on someone else without being dependent on them. It's relying on someone to say, hey, my emotions are really big right now. Can you sit in them with me? Right? You're not responsible for them, but I really need you to be in them with me so I know I'm not alone, right? Because we're social creatures. We don't want to be alone. It's a really big deal to have someone in those spaces with us. That interdependence is also, I'm really busy today. Can you pick up the kids? I'm feeling really tired. It's my turn to take out the trash, but can you do it too? Right? It's asking for help. We are, again, social creatures. We don't want to be isolating and doing everything ourselves. It's really healthy to be relying on others. Codependency is when that reliance on others is flipped, so you're kind of taking it to an extreme. You're putting your own needs to the side to take care of someone else in the hopes that maybe it'll make you feel okay. But unfortunately, that's not what happens, right? It creates this dissonance within ourselves because we're neglecting our own needs, ourself, right, our worth, and we end up in this really uncomfortable and not okay place. And in our relationships, it's really hard to reach for our partner or have our partner reach for us when we're pretending like we don't have any needs or we're not articulating them.
Absolutely, and that shows up. I know we've both talked about clients, couples that we've worked with where they have a hard time putting words to their needs, setting those boundaries, and it can cause that disconnection in the relationship.
Absolutely.
Will you share a little bit more with us on what those signs of codependency are in individuals or couples?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have kind of a little bit of a long list here, and just because you have some or most of these doesn't necessarily mean that you're codependent, right? But there's a lot of indicators that will give light to that. Right? So the first one that we're going to talk about is people pleasing. People pleasing and giving more in your relationships. So again, it's that piece of I'm putting myself to the side to meet someone else's needs, and in fact, then not asking for reciprocation. So people pleasing might be pretending you're okay when you're not, saying something's not a big deal, overexerting yourself. If I'm like, hey, Lauren, can you go get me coffee after this? And you're like, I have a 10-minute break. Like, that's not enough time, but okay, I don't want to make you upset, so I'll go do it, right? And then with that, some resentment can start to build, right? Because we're not articulating our needs and honoring ourselves, right? So this might show up if you're finding yourself saying, like, I'm doing so much in this relationship and my partner's not meeting me there, right? Are you giving them the chance to meet you there? Are you saying what you need, right? With codependency, you're not doing that, right? Or it might come out in a really attacking and blaming or reactive way. So that's kind of number two there, is you're being emotionally reactive. So again, with this codependency, you're putting yourself to the side, right? You're having your own regulation being dependent on someone else. If my partner's okay, the space will be calm and then I'll be okay. If my partner's not upset, then we'll be getting along and I'll feel fine. I'll feel happy, right? It's all about the other person. And we're talking about this as partners. Of course, we're a couples clinic and it often comes up with partners, but this codependent relationship can show up in family members, really close friends, right? But as we go through this, I'll probably keep referring to partner, right? So this emotional reactivity. So with this codependency, you're putting your needs to the side. You're putting your emotions to the side. Often people don't even realize that they're doing it, right? I'm okay. No, really, I'm okay. It's not a big deal, right? But you're putting them more and more to the side, right? You're disowning your own needs, you're dishonoring yourself, and then it might come up as an explosion. Your partner does that one thing and you're like, you explode at them. You're attacking, you're critical, you're blaming them, right? And it's very reactive, right? And then with this explosion and putting your needs to the side really highlights the poor boundaries that come with codependency, right? Again, you're relying on someone else. Right? One of my clients actually shared this with me, and I love it so much, that boundaries are the place between us where I can love both you and me. Often people have this notion or idea that boundaries are selfish, right? That they're rejecting someone else, that they're not okay, that somehow your boundaries are going to upset someone else, right? And again, those boundaries are really actually honoring the relationship. They're honoring yourself, and it's that space to be able to love both you and me, right? That's really important in relationships. And with codependency, people often feel really out of control, right? And so they'll control these outside or surface things with the intention of trying to control what's happening inside, these feelings that are coming up, and often those deeper feelings. So we'll circle back to that, but I want to touch on, you mentioned earlier that EFT cycle. So we'll see this a lot in the cycle. I know we did those emotionally focused therapy couples videos, so you'll have a little bit of background what the cycle looks like. But in the cycle, we have the above the surface actions, emotions, thoughts. And these above the surface actions, emotions, thoughts are actually a way to give us a little bit of distance from this deep, scary place, our core needs, our core fears. In this deep place, I want to feel important. I want to feel like I matter. I want to feel like I'm worthy. And when my partner or someone else isn't meeting that need, when I'm reaching and they're not reaching back, I might feel like I'm not good enough. I might feel like I'm worthless. I'm not important, right? And that's really the basis and foundation of a lot of these behaviors, thoughts, right? And above the surface feelings. So to get distance from this really deep place that's scary to share, right? It's really scary to think I might not be important, right? So we have these other behaviors on top. And what we'll talk about often in the cycle is maybe being really persistent or withdrawing to stay safe, right? And that also will be like anger comes up on top, a lot of anxiety comes up on top, right? If I can be angry at you for not doing the dishes, I don't have to say that that hurt, that I'm afraid that I might lose you if I tell you that it's really important to me that you do the dishes. And when you don't do the dishes, I feel like I don't matter and you're not listening, right? It's easier to be angry about the dishes because that's a step away, right? So with this out of control feeling that comes up when we're never articulating that underneath piece, people will search for other ways to feel in control. So that might be telling someone else how to feel, telling themselves how to feel. I'm not angry, right? Or I'm angry, I'm not sad, right? You're trying to create this narrative, but that narrative's not in your control in that way, right? Your emotions are speaking to you. You don't get to cognitively decide what they are, right? That control can also come out in putting opinions on someone else, right? Or even in these other control behaviors like restrictive eating, over exercising, really throwing yourself into work, right? All those are control behaviors, as well as going on the other side. We'll see this come up in addiction of like using substances, right? Really diving into sex, gambling, shopping, whatever it might be.
The sense of let me protect what's going on for me inside by either using avoidance or telling myself, as you mentioned, this is how I feel, this is the narrative, and allowing yourself to keep those feelings safe to a place where you're unable to recognize them.
Absolutely. And a big place, I love what you said there, keeping those feelings safe. So a big place we see this coming up in like our couples work is that what we want, again, that interdependence, is you to know and believe and feel that your partner is going to keep that safe too, right? And they can't keep something safe that they don't know exists. So it's so important to be able to be explicit. And that's a really huge benefit of couples counseling, as we help you get to that place of having the safety net to have these discussions, right? But that's how your partner can show up for you and you can show up for your partner, right? That safety is so important because it's so scary to think, what if I tell you that I'm feeling unimportant and you say, you're not important to me, I'm out? That'd be terrifying. Of course, we'll do these other behaviors to get out of that space. Of course, I will do whatever I can to make you feel okay. If I think that you don't feel okay, you're going to leave me, right? Of course that happens. So there is a little bit of risk that comes with it of I'm going to risk being vulnerable with you to allow you to show up for me.
That risk, how huge that is, and the comfort of having a safe space to take those risks. And then outside of our office, outside of our sessions, being able to take those risks on your own, knowing that if I share with my partner, they're not going to leave. They still love me. They still care about me.
Absolutely. And tied up in that, on the individual side as well, there's also this huge piece that your worth does not come from someone else. Your worth does not come from the relationship. So a huge part of working through and healing from codependency is building yourself up, knowing that me as I am, this whole person, is really worthy, right? That I can share my needs and my wants. Someone wants to hear them, and I really deserve to share them and say them and have them be met, right? So that's another piece of showing up of a sign that you might have codependency is low self-worth, self-esteem, if you find it really difficult to love yourself. If you're unsure, I'm going to have you take a second and think about, what does your internal dialogue usually sound like to yourself? Is it really negative? Or do you make a mistake and you go, oh, that's a bummer, right? I'll be okay. That doesn't reflect my worth, right? How often do you get stuck in that negative pattern? Right? And then another sign that you might be codependent that I want to touch on is this difficulty being assertive. So all these really go like hand in hand with each other. And as you are working on this journey of being less codependent, more interdependent, you really see these overlap, which is wonderful, right? It's difficult to be assertive when you have no boundaries. It's difficult to be assertive when you're not sure about yourself and what your wants and needs are, right? But that's another kind of easier to identify sign that I have a hard time asking for what I want, or letting someone know that that wasn't okay, or letting someone know my opinion on something. That also shows up. I'll just go with the flow, right? We want to be able to be assertive and use our voice.
Absolutely, and being able to find that voice. And I'm wondering, let's say you have a client walk into your office and they have identified they experience codependency. What would your work look like with them?
Right, so we want to take into account each individual, of course, but there's this big piece of the codependency, right? We have codependency, and then we have isolation, and in the middle we have the interdependence. So a lot of the things coming up in codependency we want to keep for interdependence. We just want to add on to it, right? We want you to take care of your partner and their need, but not at the expense of your own. Right? So part of that is really building up the boundaries are such a big thing. I'm going to talk about it all the time, right? It's not only those boundaries of, you know, you did something that wasn't okay, or this is where my limit is in actions. It's also emotional boundaries, right? And those can be a little harder because emotions aren't tangible, right? But it's that moment when your partner's really upset and then you're upset, right? Those boundaries help you take a second to go, okay, it's okay that my partner's angry. That doesn't reflect me. I'm not responsible for that. In fact, I can't take that anger away. That's for them, right? That's their responsibility and for them to work through. I can show up and be there and be empathetic, right? But I can't take that away from them. That's where my emotional boundary is. And knowing that I'm not responsible for their emotions while I care about them and I can show up in them, I'm not responsible, right? That's a huge part of it. Again, adding in this self-worth, which comes with self-care, self-love, right? I know sometimes self-care can feel like kind of like a cliche, but every moment that you're intentionally dedicating time to yourself, whether it's coming to therapy, going for a run, buying that candle you really like, right? Snoozing for 5 minutes or waking up early and enjoying coffee. You are giving yourself this message, often like a little more subliminal, that I matter, I'm okay, I'm important, I need this time, right? My needs matter, right? It's this way to build up the I'm important and I'm worthy and I'm enough. And the more we feel important and worthy and enough, the less we think we need someone else or feel like we need someone else to be okay, right? That not needing to rely on someone else to regulate ourselves.
I love that you touched on that self-care piece. And I think you're spot on that word can be thrown around. Just do the self-care and you'll feel better. And it's more about how can we create that into our routine? How can we do it in smaller doses, even to remind ourselves throughout the day, throughout the week, that we matter, and practice checking in with ourselves. And that will allow us to gain that confidence, as you mentioned, and the ability to put it into words and share with our partner.
Absolutely. And another way that this might show up in a relationship where someone might be codependent is having your own interests and hobbies and friends is really important. And in relationships where there's codependency, often someone might put their own needs to the side, right, to do something that their partner wants to do. Like I really love surfing, but my partner hates the ocean. So instead of me going surfing, we go on a hike, right? I'm putting my interest to the side to appease them, right? When they might be disappointed, I don't go on a hike and go surfing instead, and that's okay. They get to be disappointed that I'm not hanging out with them. Of course they are. They want to spend time with me, right? And it's okay. And I get to go do this thing that brings me fulfillment and feels good for me, right? And again, that builds up that self-worth and self-care of me and my interests really matter.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that shows up often. And I think that's a great place to end. If you do have any questions, if you do want to know more about codependency, what it might look like, what to expect if you were to come into therapy office to talk about codependency, whether it's in a couples or individual format, please reach out. Also, follow us on our other platforms. We have Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and thank you, Sarah, so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. And actually, can I add one more thing while we're talking about like therapy? So it's huge to just be able to identify that codependency piece, right? Being able to identify it means we can work on it. And therapy, whether it's individual or as a couple, right, really helps you have this safe space where you can explore yourself. A therapist is a really amazing, compassionate, and empathetic person to be able to believe in you when you're uncertain about yourself, to highlight those places of growth, because often it's hard to see our own growth, right? It's easier for us as therapists to be like, whoa, 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 like you're doing so much, right? And really boost up everything that you're doing to meet your goals, right? Where you're highlighting your own values. And understanding that sometimes it can take a little bit to get through that therapy door, right? One of the thing I hear the most in all of my therapy, first sessions is, I've been thinking about this for a while and now I'm finally doing it. I've been thinking about this for a long time and then this happened and now I'm in here, right? I recognize that it takes a while to get to that step, and that step is huge and so important. So on the way to that step, I'd encourage you to start making sure you're using your voice more, right? And reaching out for support. Right? You want to be able to have the support with your relationship and all your relationships outside, right? Starting to test out what it's like to share these things with someone else, right? Each little piece of it, allowing someone to show up for you. And each time someone does show up for you, even if it's, I'm choosing where we're eating tonight instead of the usual, you're picking, right? That's a way to show that my opinion, my wants, my thoughts matter, right? And all of this builds up on itself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. All right, bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember to comment below what you would like to learn about next. Check out Relationships in the Raw on all of our social media channels located in the description. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe to be connected with all of our upcoming episodes.